This is Dynasty Nerd's breakdown of Jonathan Mingo ahead of his draft. So again, this video is over 7 months old. This is a full reaction by me, Nick, over here at Roll Coverage. Let's jump into it right now.
Hey, I thought it was all over.
So yeah, absolutely. This is Dynasty Nerds over at dynastynerds.com. I follow them. This is actually one of the big reasons I got into fantasy. They have such in-depth information. This is Jonathan Mingo's, breakdown and everything ahead of it. I'm going to let them talk, kind of interject where I can. Before, though, I want to preface, Jonathan Mingo is the height, physicality, and everything I look for in a wide receiver. We're just not seeing that really translate this year, but to be honest, the Carolina Panthers are not really seeing anything translate on the field. So for that reason, go ahead, Dynasty Nerds.
Moving along to our next wide receiver prospect. It is Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver, Mississippi, 6'1" 3/4
I did not cut that off in the video. It just stopped at old my.
inches, 220 pounds, 10 3/8 inch hands. Wow. 4.46 in the 40, 1.54 in the
4.6 is pretty goddamn fast, dude. I couldn't run that in a car damn near.
10-yard split. He had 22 bench press reps. That's all I got for the combine numbers. Last year in 13 games, he had 51 receptions, 861 yards, and 5 touchdowns, 4 rush attempts for some negative yards. So
you want to know his 3-cone in his pro day?
I do, because I didn't.
7.04.
Oh, that's not bad.
Even better.
Pretty
good.
Yeah.
At almost 6'2"?
6'2", 220?
220. He moves really well for being that size.
Really?
He does. We're just not seeing that separation really so far this year. Obviously, we're like 13, 14 games in or whatever the hell it is. My Panthers still only have one win after that loss to the Saints. So yeah, it's just bad all around if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, but obviously his college numbers just haven't translated. So let's find out why.
Really well.
He does. I was very impressed when I watched Jonathan Mingo. Now, there are certain guys that you look at the production and you're like, okay, I can bank on it because of production. There's other guys where you watch the tape.
There's no production.
There's not much production for Jonathan Mingo. No. So this is one of the ones where you have to really go to the tape and you have to look at traits. Yep. And I'm a big traits over production guy.
Me too.
Production's great. And
that's an interesting debate. Are you a traits over production person? Traits thing would be the breakdown that I just did. DJ Chark, man, he's crazy fast, crazy tall. He does have some half-decent hands, but his problem have been his hands. His problem has been that his speed is not always relied upon and stuff like that. Are you for the traits, or do you want to see the actual on-field production? Do you want to see, do you need your wide receiver to really take it over the top to get yards, or is he able to really grind them out in games? So I personally am a production guy. I think you can have traits that help with production, but if you're strictly going on, oh man, he's big, tall, strong, that's not really the way to go. If he's not producing on the field, he needs to be replaced, period.
I love it when they come together and you get both. That's awesome. But if I have to choose one, I want to choose traits over production. And that's what you have with Jonathan Mingo.
See, if that's the case, then the ones like Hunter Renfrow, the Cooper Kupps, the Puka Nakuas, the ones that really kind of come out of left field and all of a sudden they are really dynamic players. Of course, Cooper and a few of those guys, had their moments ahead of time, but like Puka Nakua immediately jumped onto the scene and was able to take some of those traits and translate into production. I can't be on the side of he has this trait, so we have to overlook this. Unless it's the fact that he's like Victor Wembanyama, he's like 7'4" as a wide receiver. That's going to be the only thing I would worry about. Otherwise, speed, it will eventually be something that people will lose. We're already starting to see it. Just a tiny hair with Tyreek Hill. Still the fastest man in the NFL, but that speed is going to go first. Those traits, for the most part, are going to go first, unless you're just talking about overall physicality. But yeah, I want production, man. I need to see something on the field.
Mingo. He actually ended up being my 5th receiver in this class. Now, lower class, but 73.08.
Sorry, snooty booty.
I know, look at him.
Lower class.
Nose down over there, Garrett.
Let me get my...
Jordan Addison was the best wide receiver out of this class. The one that was underdrafted heavily was Jalen Hyatt. And I swear, if my Carolina Panthers is what I was about to say, Carolina Panthers can get their hands on Jalen Hyatt, I would be over the moon because he would immediately walk in as a minimum wide receiver 2. to be honest, him versus Adam Thielen at this point, even in Thielen's career, he would be wide receiver 1 over Adam Thielen. So yeah, I just think we took the wrong guy.
What's it called?
That's a spec.
But again, I think you can say that we took the wrong guy and still have him improve and have him become something. I'm a big fan of especially smaller market teams going out there and getting those really, really dynamic wide receivers, especially the ones that were great in college. Mingo was pretty good, not the greatest, or even not even great in my opinion. He was good. But I think that there was better options out there.
Spectacle?
Not a spectacle.
That's-
You were about to
Monocle.
say
Monocle, that's it.
Monocle.
I was going to say spectacle too.
I know.
That's wrong.
That's why
There's an ectacle on it.
Ectacle. It's
I'm
an
not
ectacle.
Garrett a monocle for Christmas.
I would wear it.
You
I would 100% wear it.
You look like somebody could wear a monocle
Yeah.
too.
Like a
Like,
rocket. Maybe I would just do like the
if Garrett
curly
walked in with a top
mustache.
hat and a monocle, I'd be like, I always knew you had
Look
money.
at this Mr. Peanut looking mother.
Welcome to the lower class. With your high heels over there, Garrett.
Oh man.
Sorry, keep going.
No, I might end up doing like the curly mustache then too.
Oh yeah, you'd have to.
You have to if you have a monocle.
Obviously.
Yeah, shout out, just in case you guys aren't Dynasty Nerds fans. They are freaking hilarious. Great merch too. One day, I swear, I'll make it onto this show. They are just awesome. I love them.
Clearly.
Done and done.
How the monocle needs something to rest on?
Yeah, exactly. That little curl right there is what it, boing, boing. It's like a little spring.
Oh, it fell down.
Boing.
All right. So Jonathan Mingo, back to Mingo over here. He's the fifth wide receiver in this class. He got a 73.08. Very big, very physical receiver. But I was impressed with how well he moved for a guy of his size. And I think that was the thing that I walked away from this. Look, he's not this elite quickness, but he has decent foot frequency. His straight line speed is really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, evidenced by his 40 time, but it also shows up in games. Some of the guys, you see it in the 40, but you're like, and sometimes it's the opposite where they look a lot faster on the field. This one, I feel like they match pretty well. His game speed and his time speed look about the same to me, and it's
I agree with that. And the physicality he brings is just so different at that speed. So
it's really good for a guy of his size. Can do some of the things after the catch. His route running could use some cleaning up. I
couldn't agree more. We've seen him just be like a step too high or a step too low. So I think that's something that needs to be improved upon. But again, he's a rookie. So, obviously our hindsight's a little bit in the 2020 range about him now. Again, this video is 7 months behind. This was his pre-draft. So with that those critiques, we're starting to see it change a little bit, but we can obviously see those holes in his game to this point.
Fine.
I wrote decent.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way to put it.
I think he has the movement skills to improve, though. You know what I mean? Like he's bursty. He can get in and out of breaks. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And we even heard the report from I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah, Ian Rappaport, somebody like that. That
Two
talked
receivers that NFL
Yes.
teams are way higher on than Twitter community.
Yeah, that are
Dr.
moving
Tillman
up people's boards are Tillman and Mingo.
And Mingo.
Those are the two guys that are moving up NFL teams' boards.
Tillman and Mingo.
And
I'm good on one of those guys.
especially in a class where outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, my other three receivers are all under 5'9". It's nice to have, or 5'9" or under. It's nice to have a guy of this.
Big fan out of this draft. Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt. There's obviously some other ones. Mingo in there too. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Oh gosh, I'm missing another one. There was a dude that I swear I drafted like 100 times. Anyways, this wide receiver group overall had a bunch of guys there, especially Addison. We've seen now. Again, I'm a big Jalen Hyatt fan. I drafted him in all 50 of my fantasy teams. So yeah, I'm sold on those two so far. Mingo, I believe in. Obviously, I want to believe in him more because he's the Carolina Panther, and that's a team that I support. But
size to be able to put up there. I think with the right grooming, with the right instruction, we could be looking at a legitimate X receiver in the NFL, which I can't say that about a lot of players.
I agree. He needs to develop a lot of the intermediate stuff, right? He's very good close to the line of scrimmage. He's very good deep.
Yep.
And that's kind of where he's at now. I think we've seen this in the past with a guy like DK Metcalf coming out of the same program. He would
I just looked it up. That person was Zay Flowers. Sorry, Zay over on the Ravens. He's actually had a few pretty good games and a few where he just barely missed him. That would have been easy touchdowns, but I really like Zay as well. I think he's going to translate very well.
He would run a lot of stop routes right there, or he'd run a lot of go routes, and that was kind of his role in that offense. I don't know if I think Jonathan Mingo has done a little bit more than DK Metcalf, because DK Metcalf literally was those two things. That was it. He either was running deep or he was faking like he was running deep and stopping
and
looking
a beefcake
and looking for the ball. So Jonathan Mingo's got, I think, a little bit more route running savvy coming into the NFL than a guy like that. He's not as explosive, obviously, and or as big as DK Metcalf. So I don't want to make it sound like
they're not one and the same.
They're not one.
Yeah, but if you watch my breakdown of DJ Chark, people believed, again, at the start of that video, that Chark was pretty much right in the realm of DK Metcalf and everything like that, especially when it came to the physicals. So everyone seems to be chasing DK, even though there was plenty of people that didn't even think he'd be good at wide receiver. So I think that shows that, wide receiver is kind of a shit show when it comes to picking them at the top, at the highest level. Of course, you got those guys that are going to just absolutely blow people out of the water, the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, the Randy Mosses, the Jordan Addisons. They're really changing that. Or even, recently, Jamar Chase. Jonathan Mingo is going to be one of those guys that is a Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, where it's going to take him a few years to get going, but then people are eventually going to want him after he's corrected a few of these things, mainly that route running. If he's a really crisp Antonio Brown level route runner, he'd be a top 10 receiver in this class, no problem. Or not even in this class, in the year, but he doesn't have that yet. He really needs to add that.
The same, but coming from the same program,
similar traits,
some similar traits. So as long as he develops that middle kind of ground, that the intermediate stuff, I think for sure he's a guy that has the physical skills to be a number one wide receiver.
And we've seen it recently. And look, you have to scout the individual player. You can't just helmet scout. Right. But there are programs that tend to do a better job developing their wide receivers than others. We talk about all the time, Ohio State with Brian Hartline. Right. They do a fantastic job. But look at all the guys that Ole Miss has put out over the past decade. I mean, tons of guys. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. We just had Elijah Moore come out. There have been some very good, talented receivers that have come out of this program. And that gives you a little extra hope that, maybe he does have some of that background training, that step to the NFL might not be as big as it is for some other guys.
Yeah.
Fair comparisons, fair criticisms as well.
Yeah, he's very intriguing. I mean, everything you guys mentioned with the size and stuff, I thought he got the line pretty well as well for something he did really.
I do have a good release score on him.
Yeah.
Thing that we haven't seen so far, again, shout out to Dynasty Nerds and everything they do over there. We haven't seen the separation in the actual year. Obviously, he becomes a Carolina Panther, but overall, the team as a whole can't get separation, so I think it's more of a team problem unless a Jonathan Mingo specific. If he was the only one unable to get separation or missing wide open balls, and it'd be something, but it's the entire team. So for that reason, I'm giving him a massive pass. Again, he's a rookie. And he's arguably our wide receiver 2 or 3 on a good day. So
I thought he did that really well. I thought he tracked the ball really well, and I thought not only did he track the ball well, I thought he used his body well. So he's a big receiver that knows how to. We see that a lot, right? Like Quentin Johnson, for example, doesn't always do that, but like a receiver that he's a big body receiver that knows how to use that body and like block out that defensive back to help him put in a better position to catch the football. I thought he did that really well. And you mentioned the production's not there, so when you're watching the tape, there's not overly a ton to see. So you have to like really go in and just watch his tape in the film room where you could just see his plays and kind of get through it, where his total career, 112 catches, 1,758 yards, and 12 touchdowns. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I don't love it either. Obviously, he's going to expand on something else, but I don't love that. Your entire college career, you end up with 1,000 total yards. That's not really giving me enough tape, to be honest with you, to take you in the first or second round, unless you're just truly just miles better than everybody else. For that reason, I think Jonathan Mingo was an overdraft, and again, I think there were some people that were underdrafted. A lot of people just went for that kind of like what the title of the video is, the trait over the production.
His burst, I didn't think he had a second gear. But I feel like he's fast enough. He didn't get a lot of separation either, so he does have to work on that.
He's more of a contested catch guy.
It could probably come with better route running. That's why I thought his routes were kind of meh. I think if he can kind of hone it up a little bit, I think he does have the hips. I think he does have the movement skills to do better there and kind of get that separation. So I understand when Daniel Jeremiah says, "Hey, here's a player that is right like on more NFL GM's boards." Going to his tape, it immediately gave me some bias, right? Because like I heard that, and I'm like, but when I came away from, I'm like, oh, I see it, like, and more so, I see it after watching this class as a whole. So being the back end of the receivers of watching the tape and kind of like studying on, like it does make way more sense. Like if I'm an NFL team, like the same way where like I'm bigger on Marvin Mims and Cedric Tillman, like in the long run, kind of like at the end of our process a couple years ago, I was like, what I've realized is I'm way too low on Michael Pittman Jr. Right? Like when you get to the end.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I was one of those that really thought that his size and physicality could make Michael Pittman immediately make a massive difference to that team. But we're not seeing that. We saw, though, some people that he did not even bring up. Jordan Addison. We saw Justin Jefferson come out, and Addison was able to fill into that role pretty easily. Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. Again, Jalen Hyatt had a few just games where, I mean, it's like 2-3 catches, almost 100 yards. Like, there are some of these guys that were overlooked, or some of these guys that were just like, oh, you know, a quarterback was elevating you, and you're not going to be able to see that at the next level. Some of these dudes just have it, and some of these dudes just don't. I think Mingo has it. It's just going to take some time to develop. But like I said, he's a T. Higgins. T. Higgins now at 25 is a completely different player coming out than he was coming out of college. And something that a lot of people are going to look to him to be wide receiver one for their team, including my Carolina Panthers. I don't agree with that, but that's something completely separate.
Of all your tape watching, like it puts a lot of more stuff in clarity because like early on you watch all the
finally got everything in perspective. The whole class as a whole. So to me, when I look at a guy like Jonathan Mingo, it's like, okay, like Garrett said, it sucks because we have a lot of receivers in the Nerd Herd, like the Nerd Herd episode we're gonna talk about, are like 5'9", and they're like in college in their skill set, like they're very talented receivers. Like when it comes to like talent wise, like these guys got like the cream of the crop. Where the big guys have a lot to work on. Like if you take all the talent from the small guys and put in these big guys' bodies, like you have really good talent.
Yeah, you have a bunch of Marvin Harrison and Randy Moss, clones basically running around if that's the case.
And the problem with that, with these small guys being 5'9" or lower, like the odds of them ever producing, they have to be outliers. And there's one guy I do think that could be an outlier, but for the most part, you're literally crossing your fingers and hoping for outliers. So the fact that you have all those guys in your top 5, I just couldn't get, they're there, but they're not there because I don't know if I would draft them. And I'll tell you next week why, because you're waiting for outliers. Because if you look at the history of if you literally look at the NFL history, and I'm a big, I've been playing Dynasty fantasy football now for like 19 years, right? I've been playing fantasy football now for like 25 years. And I'm a really big history guy, right? Like it's like when I play poker, like I'm looking at odds and all that. Like that all comes into effect. So when the history tells me that if you're 5'9" or lower and you can't find success in the NFL from a fantasy football perspective, that you're not, the odds of you scoring 1,000 yards in a season are really low. So which means you're going to have to be a PPR guy. That worries me because when you have guys that are that small, you're literally talking about outliers like Wes Welker, Brandon Cooks, Marquise Brown, and I think there's literally only one other receiver that's even produced at that level at that skill set.
Steve Smith, where was he at? Was he 5'9"?
He
might have been like right at Deshaun Jackson's right in that same.
So if you're 5'9" and a half, it doesn't count. You're 5'9". He's got a 5'9".
5'9" or young or shorter. Right?
So it does get me a little bit more excited going back here to a guy like Mingo who has the size, the strength. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's run strong. Like he's tough to bring down. So
that's the thing we've seen. We also know that he's also a really good blocker because of that size and physicality. So that's another benefit.
We also, as I mentioned, he had a good combine. We also had a good Senior Bowl as well. So it does give me, I just put out my tweet of my top like 15 guys. I just kind of ran out of characters. And I did have Booty on that list. And now if I had to retweet it, which it doesn't matter because one more week where I'm in my final rankings anyways, like I would put Mingo ahead of Kayshon Booty.
And so this is top 15 overall, not top 15 receivers.
I just put them in tiers.
Gotcha.
It was like my top 15. If you look at my Twitter at Dynasty Rich, like I put my top 15, 1 QB.
Make sure to go follow at Dynasty Rich.
I already tweeted out there like I put Tyler Scott too low for something mistakenly. He would have been my 3rd tier, but Mingo would kind of get into that probably 4th tier if I had to rewrite it right now. So it's how.
So interesting to hear that he would have guys like that drafted over him, guys that have not translated and everything like that in the NFL at all. Mingo's at least shown flashes. Yeah.
fluid these guys are.
You mentioned that, having smaller guys in the top 5. The part of it is there's just no one else to put in there.
I get it.
And that's the tough part of it.
Totally get it, man.
That doesn't mean I would necessarily draft them over the running backs or some of the tight ends, but they have to go. They have to go somewhere, and you have to put some people in your top 5. But going back to Mingo real quickly, I think the other thing that we don't always focus on enough is what NFL teams are doing. And remember, NFL teams aren't only looking for skill. That is part of the equation for them, but they have certain roles that they need to fill. So there are going to be teams that Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Josh Downs, like those guys are going to be off their boards completely.
We got a guy that does the same thing. We don't need it.
We don't need that type of guy, So there might be a team where like, oh, I'd love him to go there, but there might be a team where it's just saying, we're not drafting anybody that doesn't fit this type of profile.
Or we don't even use that in our offense. We don't
Exactly.
need
Like a fullback or something, and how the game is changing.
But
So-
the Arizona Cardinals are 100% not drafted one of those guys.
They've got Brown and Moore.
They completely already missed on another guy that fits that exact same profile,
Andy
Andy
Isabella.
Isabella. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, so they're 100% not drafting that guy. You know what I mean?
You would think.
Speaking of that, what-
it. Like, look
If
at
they
you.
can learn
Look
their-
at you 100% and something. Oh, man.
that works out most of the time. I'm 100% right 50% of the time.
There you
60% of the time, it works every time.
All right.
Shout out to the Dynasty nerds and the nerd herd and everybody over there. They do great work. Again, my name is Nick. This has been Roll Coverage. Drop me your thoughts on Jonathan Mingo. Did you really think he'd be something out of college? Do you really think he's been something in the NFL? Anything you guys want to drop, make sure to follow us on all of our socials. And from us over at here, have a great rest of the day.